We're looking at the P2 Hybrid Hexagon Twist. Now this sounds rather cryptic, but what it means is the second pentagon in the hybrid hexagons. So the first one, we're just tucking one corner under. This one, we're tucking two adjacent corners under for this, of this open hexagon to get the P2 hybrid. And we're going to jump straight into folding this pattern, which starts with a closed hexagon in the center and then has closed triangles in the back and then gets into these hybrid hexagon twists. And for once, this is the exact extent of the pattern that we're going to have, because it just so happens that this was a 32-fold grid. Yes, palm-sized 32-fold grid. It started a little bigger, but not much. So we're going to be folding on a much larger paper to help see everything that's going on. And I'll start with the closed hexagon twist in the center. Also, welcome early, welcome everyone who's watching. This is a live video. I do welcome you to ask questions in the chat. Happy to talk about any tessellation topic, really. So we're starting with the closed hexagon twist in the center, which means that the mountain folds are going out to the corners. And on the right-hand side, the valley is going to be one grid spacing above the mountain. And I'm going to run this about halfway into the paper, but I'm not flattening it all the way out. You can see I can slide my hand under on the left. And I'll repeat that all the way around, making sure as I add each new one that I'm preserving this smallest hexagon made of the underlying grid triangles in the center. And also lifting up on the opposite side of whatever pleat I've put in lately to make sure that I can still raise those grid lines as mountains without them getting kind of stuck and hung up. And we're going to work those valley folds further and further in until they're two spaces away from the corners of that central hexagon. And then I like to say that we bop it, grab it, twist it. This is a sharp twist to get it to go down. It's often a little bit messy as it comes down. And then we can smooth it out. One way to double check ourselves is to flip over and make sure that everything on the back looks nice and orderly. And then we can smooth out with the bone folder. And I tend to smooth these first pleats. It's probably, frankly, a little motion tick from teaching to pause and wait for people to catch up. So now that we've got our central hexagon, we're going to flip over to the other side of the paper. And it doesn't matter how you flip over because all of these pleats are exactly the same. And we're going to put in closed triangle twists at tube pleat spacing. So I'm going to have my existing mountain folded over. One space away from that, I will have my new valley. One space further than that, I'll have my new mountain. So these are all parallel here. And I'm going to fold my new mountain and valley in order to identify the grid intersection where the existing mountain going this way and my new mountain are meeting each other. And I'm going to open the existing plate so I can find that point precisely and put in a new mountain fold heading off in the third equally spaced direction around that point. Notice this is erasing the previously existing pleat that was in here, and we will have a valley to go with that mountain in a rotationally symmetric way. Since the hexagon that we did first was right-handed, this next twist will be left-handed. And now that we have that twist, we can go ahead and squash. I'm going to zoom in a bit for the next one so we can see more detail of what we're doing. I'm going to rotate so that this tube, and it's called a tube because it looks like a tube when you look at it on the end. I'm going to rotate so that's on my right-hand side. And then I'm doing the same process using up the bottom pleat of the tube. So I've got this valley fold, one space from the existing folded mountain, mountain fold, another spacing away, folding that up to make the tube, and then opening the existing pleat so I have a new mountain coming exactly to that point at which the two other mountains meet. And I'm going to make a pleat overlap. So I'm keeping the top pleat of the tube, the one coming from the previous triangle, folded flat as I fold this new pleat through. So for many of you watching this advanced twist tutorial, this will be a review of what we do with the closed hexagon, closed triangle, twist, tube pleats, pleat overlaps. But it's worth getting into in case you're watching this and you haven't done many origami tessellations before. So I'm going to repeat those last few steps going all the way around. So we're rotating 60 degrees, working on the bottom pleat of the tube. I'm going to make the tube on the next pleat around, find all the pleats for my closed triangle, and set that up. Working my way around. This is why this is recorded. I don't expect everyone to keep up with everything live. And if we did that, it would probably take, I don't know, at least 2 hours instead of less than an hour. And so we're working our way around, putting in these closed triangle twists. And for the last one, we already have a pleat in here. So what I'm going to recommend, so we've got still a mountain to reference the spacing. We're going to have one more space from the mountain to our valley, and then one more to our mountain. And I'm going to do a compound wrap here. So I'm opening up this bottommost pleat to let the valley fold pass through. But when a fold hits an existing fold, it bounces. It doesn't just keep going straight. So that valley is going to bounce around the mountain. So it's making a turn there. And then it's hitting the valley down below, and it's bouncing there also. And the mountain fold is doing the same thing, one grid spacing away. And then we still have the contraction from our initial pleat in here, and that is going to be coming off of these three-way intersections of mountain folds. And in order to get it to lay flat, we're going to want to set up our new triangle. That's going to enable everything in here to lay down. And we can squash. So now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of our pleat overlaps are exactly the same, and our 6th is a compound wrap. So I'm going to hold that compound wrap with my right hand as I flip over. So this one's the compound wrap, and everything else is a pleat overlap. I'm going to go one overlap clockwise from the compound wrap, and that's where we're going to put in our hybrid hexagon twist. So this first one, I'm going to show you as if it was an open hexagon. So we would be opening this up and seeing, okay, this is how these pleats are coming together. That means that if this were an open hexagon, this 120-degree angle would be two sides of the central hexagon that we'd be working with. And so I can go ahead and set up those pleats. But we're not going to squash an open hexagon. We're going to take a look at this hybrid and say, okay, which of these pleats need to move? So I can see the two pleats coming from the closed triangles on the other side are going to corners that are good to go, as are these two corners in here. It's the other two, these two pleats that need to shift. So I can take this pleat, move the mountain back so it's going straight in to the center of my previous target hexagon. I'm moving the valley along with it, making sure that's laying flat. Now for my future reference, I have a tube pleat going through here. So that'll be useful later. And right now it would be a P1 hybrid hexagon, the pentagon 1, but I'm also going to move this second pleat so its mountain is heading straight into the central hexagon. And now that's what's going to make it the P2 hybrid. So we've got this situation that I don't think I've shown, except maybe in the general hybrid hexagon twist video, where we have the usual open hexagon corners, edges, and then we've got these corners that are tucked under. But what do we do with this kind of stick that's propping up the platform? We let it bend over. We let it carry on as long as possible in the direction that the pleat is headed, and then it bends back to meet the corner. So that's how we're going to squash these P2 hybrid hexagon twists. And the reason why I started one clockwise from the compound wrap is to have the space to put that in without running into a bunch of layers like we would have if we started anywhere else, because this pleat would be coming through on top of here. So for the next one, I'm going to start with some information I already have. If I've got this tube pleat going this way and a tube pleat going this way. So I'm going to put in a triangle wrap in here and set up my tube pleat going down through here. The triangle wrap is giving me a third pleat that's acting like it's going into an open hexagon. I'm going to have a fourth of those that's going to be an accordion over the tube. And then my sixth pleat is going to come straight into the center, just like this one from the tube down below. And you can see we've got the same shape as before, and it's still pointing, I'll call this the pointy end, it's pointing out away from the center. And for this ring around the center, I'll just leave those triangles to squash later. Coming on around, I'll do the same thing. I'm identifying the tube, and actually I'll give a little bit more detail on that tube pleat into triangle wrap. Got my valley one space from the folded mountain. That's the condition that makes it a tube pleat. And then I'm going to have that valley continue through. This time I'm not bouncing at the mountain fold. I'm continuing straight until I hit the existing valley. And then I'm bouncing off of the valley, making a three-way intersection of valley folds. So we've got our existing valley, our new fold coming in, and bouncing off to make that three-way intersection. And the mountain fold will follow one spacing away. And you can really add the remaining pleats kind of in any order. I'm doing this one next, the tube down below, because it is kind of dense-ish spacing. And it's going and creating pleat overlaps. It's a long pleat. So there would be more to more paper to manage along that pleat. So I'm going to go ahead and get that in place first. And then these other two pleats are going to be the accordion on top of the triangle wrap, and one heading straight in to the center of our hybrid hexagon twist. And then notice I'm squashing the open triangle-y bits first, and then the basically identical flaps but tucked under as valleys next, and then the prop is just getting kicked over so it lays down flat. And we'll repeat, putting in that triangle wrap so that we have our pleat coming in at tube pleat spacing. Getting our tube pleat down below. Having our remaining pleats come in as an accordion on top, and a pleat with the mountain coming straight in to the center. And then we can squash the open hexagon-y bits, the two corners in transition, and then the corner that's basically a corner of the closed hexagon twist. And continuing, I'll do the same thing for the next twist. This time, when we run our tube pleat down, we're running into some other existing pleats. We're just gonna do our best to fold through whatever's there. And I'm not going to press down too hard here because that is likely to give me extra folds that I don't want, that are slightly off grid. And I'll make sure that the rest of my pleats are happy before I squash. For our sixth hybrid hexagon twist around the center here, we're going to start the same way with the triangle wrap up here, using that tube pleat spacing. And on the bottom, we're also going to have a triangle wrap this time, So we're still using the 2 spaces between those mountain folds, and then we're wrapping the pleat that was coming from our first hybrid hexagon. And then again, we want to make sure that our other 2 pleats are happy. And then we're ready to squash. Now that we've got our 6 hybrid hexagon twists, I'm going to flip over and turn all of those triangle wraps into closed triangle twists. So I'm taking each of these wraps, taking the pleat that's free to move. Notice this one was part of an accordion pair. I'm just taking the top of the accordion, flipping it over, and squashing that twist. And then I'll go through and make sure that everything is super flat. Okay, so now back on the hybrid hexagon twist side, it's time to figure out how we're doing that next ring around the center. And so our questions are, what's the spacing and what's the orientation of the hybrid twists? So I've got a set of parallel pleats here. There's 1, 2, 3 of them, as there always will be at this stage once we've done the hexagons and triangles around the central hexagon. And I need to figure out what goes on those pleats. So I'm looking at my demo, which you can see backlit photos of this piece on my Instagram page. And I'm saying, okay, so I've got this twist, and the next twist is going to be on here. So the next hybrid hexagon in this area is going to be up here. Actually, it's going to be connected to this twist face to face, that one. And some of the things that I can see is there's only 1 spacing between the mountains going into here. So that tells me that I'm going to have a pleat coming like that. So 1 spacing between the mountain folds and going into a triangle wrap. And then this setup is going to have a pleat coming in right next to this corner. So I'm looking at this corner, I've got that zigzag, and I'm going to go 1 more spacing to have the valley fold cross over. And actually, sorry, not that direction of valley fold. It's going to be this direction, because I need it to pass through and form the triangle wrap in there. And we start to see like, okay, what the heck is going on here? Which pleats are open type ones and which ones are closed type ones. And one of the things I'm noticing in here is that we actually want that bit. So notice I had that tucked in that way. I want it to be opened out so that I've got my triangle wrap. That's going to be my 1 little zigzag back and forth. And my central hexagon is actually going to be right in here. So that is what's going on here. And we can continue adding pleats. We're going to end up with an accordion here with the triangle wrap in there and our remaining pleat that's going straight into the center. So our 120-degree angle between faces of this pentagon, these angles are going to meet up and they're going to match up entirely, so we get these kind of three twists that are forming a larger meta kind of structure. And Erlu has a question about, do I use the bone folder for the tiny grids too? Yeah, I do, and I actually use the bone folder even more than for this size. So here I was able to fit my fingers in there. But if the grid's a lot smaller, then I'm not going to be able to reach in, and so I need the bone folder to do that for me. So as we go along here, you'll start to see that I find more references, more specifics that I can point to as I'm working through this. So I just happened to have this already folded, but I folded it over a year ago. So we are working through basically reverse engineering what I've seen before. All of these triangles in this pattern are going to be closed triangle twists. We're going to go ahead and flip over and take both of those triangle wraps and turn them into closed triangle twists. Now, and grabbing this area with my new pentagon, I'm going to flip over and I'm going to have 5 pleats to work with. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The one coming from that triangle that we just squashed in there is going to be going directly into the new hexagon. And I can specifically say that this pleat is going to be my little zigzag to the corner, because that triangle is my position of threefold rotational symmetry in the broader pattern. I can also say that the corner of my new twist is going to need to come and lay right next to the corner of the existing twist. So I'm going to have a valley fold going off that way, one spacing from the corner, because my mountain will be one space away from the valley, and then sit in there. So what else can I see from this? Well, I'm going to need to pop up this structure so that I have that 120-degree angle, one spacing up from where this pleat comes out from the closed triangle, because it's going to be that little zigzag and then that 120-degree angle. And so I can tuck this triangle wrap under. So there's a corner meeting another corner there. And start filling in my remaining pleats like an open hexagon. So we got this closed one, and then that tube pleat situation took care of that closed one, and the rest of them are all acting open. And then we can squash the more open bits, then squash these transition bits and hook over that support leg and fold it down. And we get one giant bean. At least I think it looks a bit like a bean, or a compound eye, or however you choose to see it. And now I'm going to flip over to squash these triangle wraps, and I'll teach you a little trick with this triangle wrap that has a pleat overlap nearby. You can actually open this up, opening just that area. Notice I haven't opened the pleat all the way out, and let your new valley fold zigzag through, creating a compound wrap, and your mountain will zigzag with it. That lets your mountain flip over while maintaining a good arrangement of folds to open on the other side, because otherwise it would be just really stuck in place. So one thing we're seeing here is that we've got these pairs of triangles that are laying right next to each other. So that's going to be kind of a key feature to look for later. One of the things that we can do is start looking at, okay, how would the triangles need to be on this side to produce the next hexagon? But I'll leave that for a moment so we can practice finding that hexagon on the other side first. That's kind of where we're going by the end. So now we're coming in, we have this pleat overlap and compound wrap situation. I've got this zigzag going down. I know that that's going into a closed triangle on the other side. And that next pleat that's going into the closed triangle is coming through here. So the valley is hitting one spacing away from where the closed hole is going to be that we saw over in this repeat. And so I'll pop stuff open enough. So I'm popping it open just enough to get that new pleat in place. And then I'm going to make sure, because I know that I'm coming one space out from this triangle hole, and I have that 120-degree angle, but this one is tucked under. It's popped down, rather. I'm going to make sure that that is popped out. And now I can see, okay, my central hexagon is sitting right here. I need to have 1, 2, 3, causing a triangle wrap, 4 pleats like an open hexagon, and then my remaining pleat is going to act like it's going into a closed hexagon, with the mountain going straight to the center. And that's how I can find the next hybrid hexagon twist. So the reference point that we found last time of this single wide tube, I didn't even have to find this time because it was already there, because we already did that triangle wrap. So now flipping over, I'll squash this triangle, and this one I have no pleat overlaps on, so I'll just flip the pleat over and squash that triangle. And I can start looking and seeing, like, how can I find where my 2 new triangles on these pleats are going to need to go in order to set up the hexagon on this pleat coming from that triangle. And I can use an analogy to the previous triangle that's identical and say, okay, what's going on here? I've got these pairs of triangles. That would be the same as these two. And that is going to be one thing I can use. So I can set up a triangle wrap, which setting it up from this side is even easier. It's a three-way intersection. And I want to make sure to set it up so that the pleat going into the hexagon is in the correct orientation. And then this third pleat is laying down. That's the one that I'll flip later. And then on the other side, I can say, okay, this pleat coming out from under the corner of this triangle, it's not the pleat going into the triangle. It goes one space before it hits the corner of a triangle twist. So if it goes out here, it hits the corner of the triangle there, which is where the valley fold goes down. And then the center is one space away. We're just going to lay that down so it's sitting ready when we need it. And now when we flip over, we've got much more of our hexagon ready to go. Now it might look right now like the center of our hexagon is going to be out here, but we need to remember that we're coming one spacing out there and finding our 120-degree angle. So instead of the center of the hexagon being here, it's actually here. And we just need to pop that out. And from there, we can add all of our remaining open hexagon type pleats. So this is a good case study of showing that even when you have 3 pleats going into a hybrid hexagon twist, you can still choose multiple centers. You aren't fixed in place yet. So it's something to be vigilant about with these twists. And now we can flip over and squash those triangles. So depending on how you are with visualizing rotations on the fly, and again, I'm doing the compound wrap over the first pleat that I encounter as I flip this over, and I don't need to open up anything further out in order to do so. And squash. So depending on how you visualize things, it can be easier to start setting up the triangles first and then grab the hexagon later. So one thing I'm noticing is that this point, which is the same as this point, is going to get a triangle corner right at that point. And so I'll open up this latest pleat in order to run that in. And again, I'm setting it up. I have the pleat going into my next hexagon, a pleat that's already fixed in place, and a pleat that's free to fold over. I'm not squashing this triangle yet because this area is still very 3D. So then I want to see, okay, over here, what is the relationship between the pair of triangles and the next triangle over? And or rather, it's going to be this direction. So I'm going to have, okay, I'm going to have one spacing coming out here before I hit the triangle corner. And that is going to then lay down. And I'm making a guess in here about how things should be poked. And then I'll flip over to the other side and see, okay, this one is coming one space from the eventual closed triangle hole and then making that 120-degree angle. So this should actually be poked like that. That's good. I need another pleat going straight into the center because I just have the one so far. And I can get that in place. And flip over. I can squash these two new triangle twists. And now I'm in a situation where I can repeat basically the last two triangles that I did. And if I can remember, okay, this triangle is going to be right next to that one. So the center of the triangle is going to be one space away from where this pleat comes out from under the corner of the next one. And I'm letting this pleat with the overlaps fold over so that can lay down flat. And then like this one in here, we're going to come one spacing out from the pleat that comes out from under the triangle, not the one that is directly going into the triangle, which is tucked underneath. And that is going to set up a triangle wrap or three-way intersection. Sometimes I call them different things when they're on different sides of the paper. And now we can flip over and say, okay, that's coming from that center where we know that 120-degree angle needs to be. So now we've identified which pleats are acting closed and which ones are acting open by identifying where the center is. And we can find our remaining open type pleats and squash. Flipping over, we'll squash the two new triangle twists. Here again, instead of keeping the first pleat folded while I squash this twist, I'm going to open up just enough to let that valley zigzag through, and the mountain will follow. And everything over here is still in place. I can close that right back up. And then here, the corner of the twist is going to be right on, the corner of the triangle is going to be right on the corner of this hybrid hexagon hole. And what makes this hole look different from these other holes that we've already worked with is the fact that the next set of triangles is going to uncover some of the hole. So we've got this end kind of more stumpy over here because it's still covered up by this pleat. I know that was something that I was noticing and being like, why do these not look identical? Because one is still partially covered. And then we've got that one spacing out from under the pair along this pleat to hit the corner. And that will set up nicely. Flipping over, we can see that these 120-degree corners are going to come together. So we need to pop that out a bit. And that is going to help me set up. Another thing to keep in mind is that this closed type pleat is going to form an accordion over the triangle wrap from the other closed type pleat. And then we can squash. And flipping over, we've got 2 more sets of parallel pleats to work on. First set is going to be exactly the same as the second, third, and fourth sets of parallel pleats that we've already worked on. So I'm going to be having the pair of triangles here. You'll notice that I have a tendency to skip to the later pleat to set up its triangle first, and then come back to the first pleat. That's kind of because this opens up the space already, and it's slightly easier to work with. And this is a 3-fold center, just like this one. So that next triangle is going to be an extra spacing away to meet the corner. And now flipping over, we've got that 120-degree corner right here. So I needed to pop that edge out so we can recognize where the rest of our open type pleats need to go. Now flipping back, I can squash triangle 1 and triangle 2. I'm going to open up just enough to let the valley, the new valley from the flipped pleat, zigzag through my first pleat, close everything back up, and squash. And now I can set up the triangles for my next hybrid hexagon, opening up this situation, putting in the first triangle with its corner right on the hybrid hexagon hole. And then my next one is going to be 1 spacing out from the pair of triangles. Flipping over, I'm going to make sure that I have my 120-degree angle set up 1 spacing from where this pleat disappears into the future closed triangle hole. I've got that accordion for the next closed pleat on top of the triangle wrap, and my final open type pleat. And squash. Flipping over, I'm going to squash my 2 new triangles. They don't have any pleat overlaps to stop me from doing that. And now I'm on my last set of parallel pleats, in which I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pleats. So from 3 to 7 very quickly. And we're going to start in exactly the same way we've been doing the last couple sets of parallel pleats. So this triangle And one of the things I can notice is every triangle that's kind of facing off a central triangle is part of a pair of triangles. So this one will be 2. And so I'm going to set that next triangle very close with the center 1 spacing away from where the pleat comes out from under the neighboring triangle, and let that wrap over with these pleat overlaps. Our triangle here is a position of 3-fold rotational symmetry, so all the next triangles are 1 spacing away. I can pop down this pleat to set up my 3rd triangle around this hexagon. And flipping over, we need to reshuffle some mountain folds to make sure that we've got our 120-degree angle here, and then find our remaining open type pleats. And squash. Flipping back, I'm going to squash the triangle without any pleat overlaps. And then for this one, I'm going to open just enough so I technically don't need to open any of this. I'm just opening enough to put through that valley fold, have its mountain be 1 spacing away. So getting that compound wrap in place on the first pleat and squashing. And now coming over here, we've got the situation that usually finishes out our set of parallel pleats, where we have our new triangle with its corner right at the hybrid hexagon hole. This time that has some pleat overlaps coming with it. And over here, we're going 1 space away from the cluster to put in the next closed triangle. Now we're going to flip over and double check and see, okay, that is 2 popped in. I need to pop it up from the back side. Make sure I have this 120-degree angle lining up with this other one. And then I've got my little accordion going on with the triangle wrap of the closed type pleat and the next closed type pleat and my final open pleat. And just a quick reminder that when I say closed type pleat and open pleat, I'm talking about where the mountain fold is headed with respect to the center of the hexagon, and not anything about the distances between the mountain and valley of the pleat. And flipping over, I can squash my triangle that has no overlaps, and the triangle that does have overlaps, I'll open up and do the compound wrap before I squash. Flipping, well, actually, sorry, staying on this side, I've got a slightly new problem to solve, which is I need to figure out where the triangles go in this situation instead of the situation where I don't have that triangle. And I can see that for all of these pentagons, the corner opposite the triangle with the threefold rotational symmetry, in the broader pattern, that is, has also the triangle corner right at the corner of the hybrid hexagon hole. So that will be the case here as well. Get to set up that triangle. And here's another of my threefold rotationally symmetric triangle positions. So I'm going to go one space out before I hit the corner of that next triangle twist. And flipping over, once again, it might look like we've got an open hexagon here, but we need to pop up that corner, and that is shifting where it looks like the center should be. And we need to find our remaining open type pleats to find our hybrid hexagon twist. So this pattern is called faceted, like insect eyes. They have those compound eyes with many facets. And we can flip over and squash our remaining triangle twists. And yes, Chris, there is only one possible orientation for the triangle, because we've already selected one of the pleats that feeds into the triangle, and therefore there's only one possibility for how those remaining two pleats go. So that is our whole pattern here. And as promised, came in at just under an hour. So any final questions before we adjourn? All right. So this is one possible use of the P2 hybrid hexagon twist. As you can probably guess, there are multiple orientations that you can use even with the same starting hexagon and triangles, or you can use a different starting hexagon and triangles. You could use the closed hexagon with closed triangles on the same side, or open hexagon with closed triangles on whichever side to start a pattern like this. And really, no matter what way you set up the initial start, you'll be able to repeat it. You just won't necessarily get these perfect clusters that line up with each other in all of the situations. Well, for starters, if you have a different orientation of the hybrid hexagon, you're not going to get this alignment as you repeat further out. So yeah, like earlier said in the comments, this is not something that I expect to take an hour for anybody else. It will definitely take much longer, and that's why the recording is here. So happy folding, everyone, and I will see you next week. But before then, actually, I'm going to be teaching in the Origami World Marathon with a simpler piece that also has some of these extended symmetry properties. So if you have another 32 fold grid, go ahead and join me over there. I'll put the sign up link in the description. Happy folding!